and tight patterns. Oh. Hello and welcome to day 2 of the One Piece Treasure Cup from Birmingham in the UK. My name is Ross Gilbert and I'm delighted again to be joined for a lovely day of Top Cut action by the lovely Ben Fitzpatrick. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing very well, Ross. Feeling really refreshed after a long day over in day 1 yesterday, but ready to crown ourselves a champion and a king or queen of the pirates.
Yeah, you were at the venue before I'd even woken up this morning. You are on it today, Ben. But I am awake and I am here and I'm a little bit excited. And we have a couple of results. We have had Treasure Cups concluding in Australia, who are a few hours ahead of us. And we had a Treasure Cup concluding in North America that was a one-day event. And we've seen a win for Law so far. That was down in Australia.
Yep.
We've seen a win for Red Luffy, I believe, in North America, but a finalist appearance from Trafalgar Law. And our 9-0 yesterday was a Law player. So I've got to ask you the question, has Trafalgar Law been the best deck all along?
It seems like it. I mean, it's been having great matchups throughout the day, throughout yesterday and throughout these first initial Treasure Cups. The only time that Law did sort of stumble yesterday was against Eustace Captain Kidd, so possibly could be a little bit of a roadblock. We are expecting at least 2 or 3 Kidd decks to be running around in top 16 today, but it seems like it's pretty poised. It deals with the matchups pretty well. We saw 3 unique matchups that our undefeated player Jan got through at the back end of yesterday. So it looks primed to be able to put in a really, really high showing and possibly make another final here as well today.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be. I mean, like we say, we were following all of the news kind of coming into the event. And the real hype was for the Green Kid decks and the Red Luffy or Zoro decks. For what it's worth, looking at results so far, seems like Luffy is actually winning over Zoro, which I didn't really see coming personally. And they were the 2 decks people were hyped by. And Trafalgar Law is not some unexpected secret deck no one expected. I've seen plenty of winning Law decks. I've seen plenty of top-cutting Law decks. It's not that nobody thought Law was going to be good or that nobody thought Law was going to top-cut or any of that. The surprise here is that we expected Law to be in that comfortable second tier with things like Kaido, like Doflamingo. We didn't expect it to be the best deck. But quite frankly, if today on our stream goes like yesterday did, I think we're going to be able to finish today's stream going, yeah, you know what? Trafalgar Law is the best deck. That is the deck to beat.
Yeah, Law's in a really, really nice, comfortable place here at the moment. I mean, going back to saying about that Red Luffy conversation, the Zoro conversation, in that Long Beach top 16, 6 of the decks that made it into top 16 were Luffy. Just 1 Red Zoro deck, which is surprising even to us, I think. I think we were always kind of tossing up between whether Zoro was the favourable one, be able to attach that Don underneath it with a leader skill, give every other character an extra plus 1,000 power. But players are favouring that extra rested Don availability, and it's paying off dividends clearly in North America. So whether that seems to be making an impact later on down the line and as the format continues to develop, we'll wait and see. But Law being able to double dip into the red and the green, we were talking before the stream went live about the capabilities of being able to pull from 2 separate colour pools, obviously with One Piece's construction being so specific to the colour of the leaders that you play. It looks in a really, really good position to be able to utilise all the tricks.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the cards we see played in an awful lot of decks are the 1-cost blockers. But the only deck you don't see 1-cost blockers in is purple, because do they even have a 1-cost blocker? They've got Black Maria that's a 2-cost blocker,
yeah,
and they do play that. I've seen a lot of play. But, you know, you've got your Tony Chopper in red, you've got your Capone in green, you've got your Trafalgar Law in blue, and we see these cards coming out over and over again, but if you're playing a monocoloured deck, you're very much limited to one of them. Whereas, you know, having this Trafalgar Law, having all of them, that's kind of a big deal. But it's more than that. It's being able to play Rush Luffy or Rush Zoro and then restand it using Trafalgar Law, so you can actually get 2 attacks with that Rusher in one turn in a way that you just can't in other decks. Being able to attack with Law and then replay it with the Romance Dawn Trafalgar Law, so you can kind of attack the Law you played last turn, pick it up and then play it back down and attack with it again. And it's one of those called extra attacks. And these red-green decks, it's not just that they've got good rushers, although they have good characters with rush, it is that they can reuse those characters. They can pick them up and replay them. They can restand them. And I know green can restand very nicely, but you know what? Outside of the Kid leader, these red-green decks can play all of it anyway.
And don't forget the search engine and the engine that's able to get to that place in the first place. Of course, playing red, you've got the fantastic Nami searcher, 1 cost, get a straw hat, from the top 5 cards of your deck. And then in green, you've got Jewelry Bonnie and Momonosuke as well. You've got 3 extra 1-cost cards right there that are not just helping you put bodies on the board to activate that Trafalgar Law leader skill, but also get everything else into your hand. Those 3-cost Rush Zorros that we were talking about, the 5-cost green Trafalgar Law from the starter deck. Even if players want to go up to that, the 7-cost Captain Kids and things like that, you're playing green. If you want the extra big bodies on the board, you're able to try and dip into it. So, you know, it's a really, really interesting, fun, versatile deck. I think it covers its bases really, really nicely. The only thing that it really falls foul of is not being able to have those electric stats. So we've seen that with a lot of decks. We've seen that with Kaido. If you don't get the Onigashima turn 2, you're already playing a little bit behind the 8 ball. With the Doflamingo decks, if you don't get your turn 1 Coronas or your turn 2 Doflamingos to set up that leader skill, you're already behind the 8 ball a little bit there. So if it can't quite get its start right and you can't quite find that sequencing of being able to flood your board early and then utilise the leader skill early like we have seen with Jan at the end of day 1, that's where you could be in a little bit of trouble. But I think overall, it's a very, very solidly built deck.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of points to pick up there. Firstly, the fact that you're playing all those 1-cost searchers, generally you're filling up your board and it's not ideal. We've actually got Law on the screen there, and we can see that what you have is a way of, you know, paying 2 cost to switch it for a 5 cost. So you actually get to essentially, you know, you pay the 1 cost for the searcher, you pay 2 for Law, and actually you then ended up paying 3 Don for potentially up to a 5 cost card, which is absolutely absurd, just in kind of how easy that can end up being. Now it does look like, pivoting away from Law, that we've actually got here a Kaido mirror match. Now I know one of the leaders is face down, but I'm sure I peeked a super pre-release art Kaido before it went face down. So it looks like we got some Kaido on Kaido action here. So we are, you know, you said yourself a minute ago, these are not decks that are going to go explosively straight out the gate. We're going to be looking for that Onigashima Island, turn 1 or turn 2, because turn 2 you can't play it, but you want it in your hand turn 1 ready. Yeah. And then it's going to be things like who gets the 9-drop Kaido to get a big rush with a big KO at the same time. Who gets the 10-cost Kaido? Because the thing is, both of these decks are kind of set up to use that 10-cost Kaido as a big drop. But you're playing against another deck that's kind of prepared for that as well. So when do you drop it? At what point do you drop it? These are going to be very, very interesting questions, and it's going to be fun. We saw Kaido on stream yesterday, but Kaido Mirror, this is new territory.
And this is something that I think that coming into this tournament, we were expecting to kind of see at this sort of stage of the tournament. A lot of Kaido running around, a few Kaido mirrors, and it'll be interesting to see if either of these two players have thought of that themselves and have teched in any cards. I know in one of the Kaido decks that we saw on day 1, we saw one of the promo, the Dragon Art promo Kaido, to be able to help accelerate some Don in, which might be able to just give yourself the front foot against the exact same deck. You're both trying to do a very similar thing, get the Don on board early, then be able to manipulate and use it with all the various minus Don effects, the leader skill being a great example of that. -7 Don, activate main once per turn, trash the top card of your opponent's life, to be able to just take 7 away, burn your opponent for a life, get a little bit ahead, then get it straight back with cards like Onigashima Island, like that promo Kaido.
Yeah, it's all very good points there. Now, what is going to be interesting here is, you know, well, I've done that leader skill. I like that leader skill, the -7. Now, we saw this used to excellent effect on stream yesterday when your opponent only has 1 life remaining. This is, and I've played a bit of, I like Kaido. I would never take it to a tournament. As a player, it's not my play style. I think Roscoe Zoom is the way you kept describing it yesterday. That's how I like to play, but I love this Kaido deck. I'm not sure I've got the patience to really play it in a tournament, but I'm a big fan of it. And one of my favourite things to do as a Kaido player is use that activate main to take the final life. Have a couple of, and it's hard to try and manipulate your board to get to this stage, but if you can have a couple of big attackers, or even just 1 big attacker if there's no blockers on board, you use that skill, get rid of your opponent's last life, and then throw a couple giant attacks at them. You know, hopefully you manage to handle their blockers. And we saw yesterday a couple of times if there are no blockers on the board, it's a very straightforward, I'm going to make an attack so big, there's no way you can counter it. I'm going to throw a 13,000 power character at you, you're not going to counter up 9,000. I am going to get this attack through. So all these things are what we got to check, but we are now off with the top 16. We got Panda and we got James. And just a very quick note, I did the sums yesterday. There was 6 7-2s at Top Cut, and there were 26 who bubbled out. So 6 of the 32 7-2s got in. James's resistance must have been very good.
Yeah, and playing this Kaido deck, you expect him to have been playing a lot of high-level games, a lot of low, lengthy games. Obviously, you see the timer at the top of your screen there. In top 16, in this Top Cut, we are now playing best of 3 with a time limit of an hour. The same tiebreaker rules apply, however, if the game is to go the distance, 3 turns or 5 minutes, whichever is sooner. And we see straight away there from Panda that Onigashima Island being played on curve. That's exactly how you want to start things out on top 16.
And had a cheeky attack with Kaido, which did go through, so does have the life lead, has taken a life there. We see James has got that Sasaki down, which we saw on stream yesterday. It can get you an extra Don card, but it's a when you're attacking and it's trashing a card from your hand and it's Don X1, it's fine. It will get you extra Don on the field, but it doesn't do so as well as our Onigashima Island. So, yeah, we're not there quite yet. You know, certainly, if I'm looking at the first couple of turns, I like Panda set up a little bit more, being ahead for a life, having the stage card there. We are very, very early though, Ben. I do think that does need to be said.
Yeah, it is early in the game, but I think when you're facing down a Kaido mirror and you're seeing your opponent playing a very, very similar list to the deck, obviously there may be a couple of little different variations with some tech cards and things like that in there, but when you see your opponent having the kind of start that you dreamed up or you played out on the simulation thousands of times, it does feel a little bit disheartening, I suppose. We see the Don going underneath the Sasaki there, so we will be seeing another Don coming out in some form or manner. There it goes there with the attack. So there is acceleration coming out, so I'm not overly nervous as of yet, but I definitely think that it's a little bit of an uncomfortable situation to be in, but then again, when you've got the extra games later to fall back on, you're not panicking just yet. It's still early, like you say.
Yeah, now we did see the attack with the Sasaki, which was countered with the ulti there by Panda. We are now seeing an attack from the Kaido leader from James, and Panda's just deciding essentially, am I going to take the life? It seems there was obviously no blocker on the board, because you've got 2 options in One Piece, right? When your opponent attacks, you can use a blocker to stop the attack, or you can use cards to counter to get yourself up to a higher amount of power than the attacker, and it must be a higher amount of power because the tie goes to the attacker. What we saw, however, there was that Panda did take the life, but it was Thunder Bagua, which is got a really nice trigger. That is a skill that comes in when a card is taken as your life, which gives you an extra Don. So actually taking that life worked out for Panda because it gave them an extra Don nice and early. We've already got 9 on the field now.
Yeah, that was a really, really big trigger to come in early for Panda there, being able to continue along with this acceleration of Don. You can see that he's already got the Onigashima Island as opposed to his opponent, then getting that Thunder Bagua to just accelerate one more extra Don, that Don coming in active as well, just in case there was any event shenanigans that came out from any other attacks, but with both cards now finally rested, there won't be. So now with 9 Don up, Kaido is going to swing into the Sasaki. I like this line of play here from Panda.
Oh, blockers come out. James had the blocker on the board and blocked the attack. And actually, Panda here is turning up a blocker of their own.
Yeah, and a great blocker as well, being able to use that Don -1 ability, draw 2 more cards, trash 1 as well. Typically, you certainly wouldn't mind trashing an extra Onigashima Island here. You've already got it in play, and it's a pretty easy card to just throw away and go, yeah, I've got my acceleration now, I don't need it. Pitches away another Queen instead, however, so must feel that his hand is in a pretty good situation if he doesn't want that extra card draw, or even the extra big blocker on the board, Ross.
No, I mean, you're right, stages. I'm sure at some point we're going to have lots of cards to get rid of stages, but the card pool we've got at the moment, that is not where we are. We don't have a way to get rid of stages unless I'm missing something obvious. So when you play a stage, it is staying out there for the game, so all those extra copies are completely superfluous. They're just going to sit in your hand. Now, it does seem like James has actually found the Onigashima Island here, which is a very big deal. We love this. The question becomes, I mean, well, no, you're going to play it. Like, there's no question.
Yeah.
The question is kind of whether you've got the Don to play it this turn. So we do see the Queen coming down as a blocker. Now again, we see Don -1, you draw 2, then you trash a card from your hand. You've got to play the island, it's too good. In a lot of decks, when you get your 10 Don on the board, that's it, you're good. But we see these Don minus skills. With purple, you need all the Don you can get your hands on.
Yeah, and being able to consistently recycle them as well. This is now going to become a little bit of an interesting shift with James, because presumably he will be playing the Onigashima Island after this Queen effect resolves, but he also has the Sasaki still on board. That's why I liked the initial line of play, the turn of 4 from Panda, trying to attack and target down that Sasaki, because he realises that currently on the field, that is the only form of Dawn acceleration. Now that that's managed to stay alive, thanks to the blocker running in the way, 3 Don open presumably will now play the island, and that's 2 extra levels of Don acceleration. Obviously you have to commit one to the Sasaki, but being able to further accelerate, get yourself up to 10 Don a lot quicker, it's going to be a lot better position, I think, for him later in the game when he wants to start using those big minus effects.
Yeah, now we do see Kaido attacking into the other Kaido, James attacking into Panda here, and Panda is actually going to choose to activate Queen. Important to note that Queen, it looks like, has actually enough power there. Yeah, it's 6,000 against a 5,000. So, I mean, did James forget about the blocker there? Or was James just trying to make Panda actually activate the blocker and have it rested to maybe try and take out the Queen next turn or something along those lines? Because generally speaking, if you attack when your opponent's got a blocker which is going to survive, that's not usually what most players choose to do.
Yeah, possibly just trying to bait out a counter from hand as well, perhaps. I think that maybe just like you say, it's early on in the day, players not necessarily quite warmed up perhaps with their thinking caps on. It is quite a skill-intensive deck, is Kaido, to be able to figure out when you're going to use your Don, how you're going to use your Don. It is such an important resource and something that sets it apart from a lot of traditional card games out there. But just being aware that that 6k is going to be enough. The tie going to the attacker, but he's perfectly fine up there, doesn't need to commit any counters, still has the extra board on the battlefield, and now with Panda up into 10 Don territory, do we see the early 10 drop Kaido? I think it would probably be the wrong play at this stage. I don't think you get the most value unless I'm missing something.
I'd rather see the 9 drop Kaido here, actually. That would be my preference. You drop a 9 drop Kaido, you can get rid of the Queen, then the blocker's off the board, and then you've just got like a big 10,000 power rusher. That for me would be my preference personally. Of course, it all depends on what cards you've got in your hand. You know, unfortunately, you don't always have everything you need, which is a little bit sad. So, yeah, I mean, that Queen very much is on board for Panda. So that attack from James's Kaido didn't do anything. But again, might have been trying to bait out a counter. There are other reasons. We see the exact same thing here coming on from Panda. An attack into a Queen that just gets rested. So then the question is, do we see an attack? You know, what Panda can do now is attach a Don to Queen and take out, well, doesn't need to attach it on actually, just take out the Queen with the Queen. Tie goes to the attacker. So there are reasons to do this, baiting out a counter or maybe trying to take out a character. You can only attack a rested character unless you're something like Page 1 or Frankie who have got a skill that can get around it. But yeah, it's a very kind of back and forth thing here. The Kaido decks want the big swings, and that... Oh no, okay. So I like this. So we baited out the blocker so that you can then attack with Queen. Ooh. Oh, and here we do see the 10 drop Kaido. It was in hand, it was available, and that is basically going to get rid of, whoa, everything except for the big Kaido. Bearing in mind your opponent will get the first chance to respond to this, has lots of Don on the field, etc. But this is a big swing in the game right here.
Yeah, it's interesting there because I think that I did like the attack initially early on from the leader into leader, trying to rest that Queen early. It, to me, telegraphed slightly, oh, Kaido of his own.
Oh my goodness, Kaido against Kaido. And that's the thing, when you use this, you give your opponent generally the response with basically an empty board on both sides and usually 10 Don. And we do see that sometimes dropping that Kaido at the wrong time can give a real big comeback. All we really saw here was Kaido taking out the Kaido, and we're even on life here. But if I'm James, we've basically got the exact same board, but I've got the 10 drop Kaido, so I'm feeling all right about that right now. Does Panda have anything to do to to respond here.
Yeah, this is why sort of kind of the inkling for me of why it felt a little bit too early to drop that 10 cost Kaido. I mean, obviously, there's no way of knowing that your opponent had their 10 drop of their own in hand, but I feel like that the value that you were getting out of dropping that 10 cost Kaido, I think, like you say, I'm completely on board with your line of play initially. If it was in hand, Ross, the 9 drop, being able to utilise that rush, the swing in from the leader, baited out the block from the queen, and then you could have freely just rushed either into face or into the blocker to try and really get rid of it without committing the 10 cost Kaido down. We see 7 cost king here. Probably would have been quite nicer a turn earlier as well, being able to get rid of one of those 3 cost characters. But it's some decent pressure on board, but nothing that's going to be able to get around 12,000 power that's staring him down in the face.
No, we did see an attack from Panda which took out a life, which is an excellent thing there. The king came down. You didn't get value off that king.
No.
That king's got Dom -2, and you get to KO a 3 cost or less and a 2 cost or less. That is what you want to do. You want to play it down, get rid of 2 of your Dom, and then you get to take out a couple of characters. That's why you play this king. It's a really good card. What we saw here was playing it down as a vanilla 7 cost 7,000 power. Well, a vanilla 7 cost should have 9,000 power, so no. We do see a swing from James here, but easily countered with the X-Drake.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a shame, I think. The king as well. Ooh, 6 cost starter deck king.
No, but that doesn't do a huge amount of good here, because that takes out a 4 cost or lower, and there's no 4 cost on the board, so, like, again, you're getting the king down, which is lovely, but it's a Dom -1, take it, KO a 4 cost or less. There is no 4 cost or less. It's another king that's got decent power, but it's being played without getting the real... But the thing is, these purple decks have bigger characters. If you're playing against like that Trafalgar Law deck with all those little characters, these king get really good value. In this matchup, we're not seeing the value from the king.
And that's what these kinds of cards are in here for, right? It's to try and help combat some of the other cards, the other decks in the meta, particularly some of those red decks that like to rush in quickly, like to build up their board and play a lot of those smaller cost cards, like the Rush Zoro, even like the Rush Luffy and things like that.
Oh, it's happening again, Ben!
It's 10 cost Kaido!
10 drop Kaido! Now, we did see an attack with Jay from Panda that was countered with a Blast Breath, I think it's called, and, you know, didn't go through, and then Ben, sorry, you're Ben, and then Panda's just like, let's do it again! So, you know, we had a couple of big king on the board. Panda had the 7 drop, James had the 6 drop, and then it's like, nah, you know what, Kaido. And I'm sorry, I want so badly for James on his turn to just go, 10 drop Kaido.
But this is the better value out of this Kaido drop now. You're getting rid of 1 big Kaido, you're getting rid of that 6 cost king that was just played down, so you know that that's 2 big attacks that are going to be cleared away. You do lose the 7 cost king on your side of the field, but again, like we were saying and alluding to, I don't think I'm too dissatisfied with that. You're not getting the massive effect from the massive benefit from the effect. Just being a 7 cost for 7, it's a good trade-off, I think, if I'm Panda.
Yeah, I'm liking this. Basically, you both had 2 big characters out, but James's king was ever so slightly bigger than Panda's king, and now Panda's got the Kaido. And the thing is, we've seen James play one of his own Kaido, so the chances of him having a return are not 0 by any stretch, but they are lower. The more resources your opponent expends, the more cards they play, the less likely they are to have a comeback, to have a response to this. And that's what I'm loving from Panda's play here. I think this is absolutely brilliant. I am frankly a fan of what Panda's pulling out here. This is nice.
Yeah, this is a really good strong start to a best of 3 situation in a top 16 and the first major One Piece TCG tournament here in the UK. Just going back to that King or that Kaido situation as well there, obviously a lot of these decks will play the 4 of that 10 cost Kaido just to be able to try and see it the most chances, have the most chances to see it, be able to utilise it again and again if, for example, like we've just seen, if you're playing in the mirror match and you get 10 dropped Kaido yourself. But I know a couple of players that I've spoke to in my local competitive scene have sort of debated whether the 4 cost is or the 4 of is a little bit too clunky. They feel that being able to see it multiple times, you might stick with it in your hand, and if one of them happens to stick around and you can flood your board out from there, you don't necessarily need to start dropping another 10 drop. So we know for a fact with the Don that's being presented by James that there is not going to be another 10 drop here, but the question becomes, is James in the camp of I do run the 4 off for the consistency, or do I just run the 3 for sake of being able to have one there on the board that I'm guaranteeing to myself is going to stay there for quite some time, and by that point the rest of my board is flooded.
Yeah, we do see a counter with the ulti here just to stop the attack from the Kaido, which is, you know, just again, that's very much a speculative swing. Now we do see that little 2-cost blocker coming down here, which is a card, we see this as a 4 of, just like Black Maria, we see a lot of them. Oh, and we've got that vanilla dude who, I'm sorry, I'm still... We see this popping up in lists. It's Babanuki, and it's just a vanilla 5-cost 7,000 power, and it's numbers. 7,000 power means you can't be countered by a 2,000. It's a terribly unexciting card, but it's the cheapest way to hit that key 7,000 power number.
And it's a nice little card to be able to play on curve, right? 4-5, especially if you get that turn 2 on Onagashima Island, you can get yourself up, get 7,000 power on the board in turn 3. Like, that's ridiculous. So I liken it to the surprise that I get whenever I play Virgo in blue. It is just a vanilla card, but that extra power on board really helps you just be able to put on some pressure early, be able to give your opponent something extra to think about, and like you said there rightfully, Ross, being able to hit that magic number of 7,000 naturally, not having to commit any extra don to it, it does put opponents into a little bit of an awkward situation. And when there's no blockers on the board right now for Panda, he is just down to counters or event cards to be able to stop them going through. Yes, he's got the life advantage at the moment, but he probably really wants a Higurashi of his own just to be able to hang back and eat up one of those attacks from the Babanuki that might come.
Yeah, absolutely. For Renault wondering, the reason 7,000 power is so crucial is because the tie goes to the attacker when we are attacking. And the counters come in flavour outside of events, they come in flavour of 1,000 and 2,000. So and the leaders all have 5,000 power. So if I attack with a 7,000 into a 5,000 leader and they counter with a 2,000, the tie goes to me, so they have to then have another counter, and that's what makes it such a big deal. That we did see a blocker getting expended there. That attack unfortunately did not go through, but a blocker was taken off the board, so it's, you know, it's not the end of the world, really.
Yeah, and I like the sequencing from Panda there as well. Swinging for 6k into the leader with his own leader, baiting out that blocker. It leaves that Kaido happily available, ready to swing with 12,000 freely. It's going to be very, very rare that you'll see it be able to be negated and countered. We are seeing the 6-drop Queen being played out here as well. This is an effect that gives Don -1 gains rush during this turn and then puts a character down to -2,000. So that Babanuki is now on 5,000. It's not rested, so it can't be eligible to be attacked. But now with the Queen that's just been played gaining rush, this is another free and easy 5k swing into the attacker and into the leader, which is going to have to ask for a counter here from James if he wants to stop from going down to presumably 0 life. Just counting up the Don as well on Panda's side of the field, there is only 6, it looks like there. I'll get my counting fingers out. It looks like it's just 6, so we're not going to be able to see the -7 leader ability to burn a life here. But with no answer and if there's no response 4 cards in hand for James, we could be seeing him go down to 0 life.
Could happen. There's absolutely a possibility. I mean, certainly Panda's building up a pretty good board here. We've got the 10-drop Kaido, and we've not seen James be able to respond the second time it came out. That Queen, I mean, this Queen's not a phenomenal character, but it's got rush and -2,000. Obviously, the real goal with Queen is to take out a small 1,000 or 2,000 power blocker and then get a cheeky attack off through what would have been a blocker. That's why you're really playing Queen. That's the value you want to get from it. But again, that is good against these red and green decks that are playing these little blockers. It's not so great. And this is the thing. We see a lot of these cards, like King, like Queen, that are very good in purple decks, but are not good against purple decks. And we see a swing with Kaido, which does go through here. So this is starting to get very, very interesting. We've got 1 life remaining from James. Panda seems to be taking a bit of control here.
Yeah, and now after this next turn as well, he will put himself back up to be able to utilise that extra -7 skill ability. So we could very well be seeing close to the end of the game unless James has managed to find a 10-drop Kaido of himself. I think realistically that would be the biggest way that James swings himself back into this game 1, because after that we've just seen it from James. How do you try and respond to a second 10-drop Kaido that just completely wipes away that board? The Queen attack managed to draw out a blast breath, so that's knowledge to Panda that that's one less event that he has to worry about for the resulting swings next turn. It is a very, very uncomfortable situation for James to be in here.
Yeah, very much so. And we saw in the green mirror match that sticking a kid was a big deal. Seems like in this mirror match, sticking that 10-cost Kaido is a very big deal. Things like the 9-cost Kaido that's got rush and KO's a 6,000 power character is good, but it doesn't counter the 10-cost Kaido. So what you really need to do is have something, and 10-cost, 12,000 power. I forgot about this card in a video the other day. I got a lot of stick from people. I felt very bad about it, of course, Ben. But it is, as it stands at the moment, it is the biggest character that we've got, and it's going to be a while until we see another one to match it. So it really is very, very difficult to take out. It takes a lot to try and get this off the board. Honestly, as we've seen, the best counter to a 10-cost Kaido is a 10-cost Kaido.
And with 10 Don up and available, it is an option, but I think with how much James has been trying to think out this turn, I can't really assume that he's got the 10 cost in hand, because you'd imagine that if the 10 cost sits there, it's simple as turn everything sideways, drop the 10 cost, pay the Don minus ability, and we'll start from scratch again. Obviously, he would lose the utility of that Babanuki, but I don't think you're
I'd
worried.
give that up.
Yeah, you're not worried.
I'd take that.
You're not worried too much about getting rid of a 5-cost 7k vanilla. Now trying to eye up a swing in here with leader. It's going to go into the Queen.
But there's no boost, so any counter at all will stop this attack. And Panda likes having a couple of big attackers on the board, you've got to imagine. And right, so we know at this stage Panda's got the counter. And the reason we know that is Panda didn't just discard the Queen. So we know Panda's got the option to counter. And, there's a dead giveaway, that whether you can see the hand or not, we do see the X-Drake coming down there to counter it, and there are certain things you can look for. If a player doesn't have a counter, they have to discard the card. If they know they want to save it, they play the counter right away. If they think for a little bit, that's saying, I've got the counter, but is it worth it? How much do I need to protect this Queen? And that gives information. That tells James that Panda wants the Queen, but it's not an absolute must keep. There are other things Panda's thinking about. And for James here, this is it's kind of awkward, honestly, at this stage. And what are we seeing here? Did he just pick up a load of... No.
7 Don's currently been picked up into
Okay, he did pick up 7 Don. I'm not going crazy. Hey, why would somebody pick up 7 Don in a Kaido deck, Ben?
I wonder why. I wonder if he's eyeing up trying to ping one of those precious life cards away and try and bring himself a little bit further into this game. But I think I can understand... Oh, okay.
He's not. He's taken out. Oh, I love this. I adore this play. That was such a good play. And this goes back to before. Why was Panda thinking about whether to counter the save Queen or not? Just in case that happens. And Panda there, and there was no way of Panda really knowing, Panda, and I'm not blaming him for this, made a mistake. Shouldn't have countered to save the Queen. Should have saved the counter to save the Kaido. Chose not to. Basically was betting that James wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
James did that. Put 7 Don on the vanilla card, took out the giant character, and that is how you can get rid of the 10-drop Kaido. It is not a play most people are comfortable making.
But then a 6-cost Queen coming straight back down. That's the second one. It will get the -1 Don effects to give it rush. So Panda now fully in game closure mode, and that's why I think that I'm with you here, Ross. I'm not 100% sure why he initially wanted to protect the Queen, because I would have been very, very content to let the Queen go down, save the Don back behind, because you can easily just -7 Don, ping the extra life that's remaining, and then swing in with the 12,000 power Kaido there. I mean, granted, he would have needed to have 3,000 powers worth of counter. If I've done my maths right, that Babanuki was up to 14,000.
And there was an extra Don that could be used, so it could have been 15.
It could have been 15 if necessary, but as soon as you declare that attack with the Don attached to it, that is the amount that's been declared now.
Yes. Also, what I'm getting at is, I think if Panda chooses not to counter, James might have put the extra Don on going, oh, I think you've got a counter and chose not to use it. Let's really go over the top here. But we did see an attack from Queen, and it did go through, taking off that final life. Is Panda close enough to the end of the game that getting rid of that 10 cost didn't matter?
I think he's actually elected to burn the life first, because now the queen's being turned sideways, and there's a lot of Don that have been turned
I
face
think
down.
you're right. I think he did use Kaido's leader skill there. Good catch on that one, Ben. And this is what I was saying at the beginning of the game. Use that skill to get rid of that life, and then basically it looks like he's got 3 attacks, and James has no blockers on the board. So the question here is, if one of these attacks can go through, and you'll see James has kept a Don there to try and make sure he's got something to use to, to fuel an event card if need be. We do see another queen being met, and then we see another counter. You might have to look in the top right-hand corner for this one, folks. We can see James is keeping his cards very close to the edge of the table, playing those counters very, very gingerly into the trash, but we can see it there. We know those counters were used. And now the question is, we got another attack with Kaido with 2 extra Don. Does James have a way to counter?
He does.
He's got is it Blast Breath?
That is a Blast Breath, yeah. That'll put him just over the line. He'll put a Don back into his Don deck as well, so that he'll be able to draw naturally from the deck there. He'll have to grab all of the Don that he put underneath his Babanuki first as well. But yeah, I like the attempt there, and I like the sequencing from Panda there. Just poking him with a 5 a couple of times, baiting out a couple of those counters early, then putting the last 2 Don underneath the Kaido and saying, well, here's a magic number. You either got an event or you need an extra 3,000 powers worth of counter. You've just burned 2 of them with double Sasaki from the 2 queen attacks respectively. Do you have it, yes or no? In this instance, James managed to have it, and he's put it back into a situation where, realistically, he needs a little bit of board consolidation here. He needs to flood his board with a couple of blockers. He wants a Higurashi, he wants that queen as well, I think, the ones to draw, and a couple of extra cards. Trash away maybe an Onigashima Island that's just sitting in his hand dormant. But he really wants to be able to consolidate a little bit, draw into that 10-cost Kaido, wipe the slate clean once again, and put the pressure back on, because at the moment he's got 3 attacks staring him down the barrel and 3 chances at a game 1 lead for Panda.
Yeah, and it's important to note there was a Don kept on James's side of the field. We see this a lot, and it's little things like that separate good players from really good players. Keeping that Don so that you can use that Blast Breath, because I suggested it could have gone on Babanuki, and it could, to try and make sure you get that attack through, but then you don't have the option for the Blast Breath. That's why you keep a Don on your side of the field. And like I say, when we saw the counter coming out from the attack on Queen, that basically showed James he didn't even need to use it, and that all just worked out very nicely. But let's be under no illusions here. James has no life and 1 attacker. Panda has 3 life and 2 attackers, so yeah, James does manage to take a life here with the Kaido, but Panda is still very much in control of this game.
Yeah, he's very much in control, and with that 6k swing, you don't mind taking that when you've got the 3 life lead, or that one either with the Babanuki. There's no point pitching away counters and sending those to the trash to protect yourself when you've got such a commanding lead and ball position. With those attacks going through now, the question, the onus goes back onto James. What do you follow up with? Or do you respond? You know you've got 3 attacks coming on. You know that there's going to be, 4 Don active in next turn after the 2, and he's just going to concede.
Gives a hand. Panda wins game 1. And I actually really, really like what Panda did there, letting those attacks go through, because when you lose a life, you get an extra card in your hand. So Panda's going into the crucial, probably last turn of the game with 2 more cards and 2 more options. And they could be cards, they could be blockers, they could be big attackers. So I really, really like Panda letting those attacks go through there. And that was just a very well played game. And both players did very well there. But the real swing was when Panda got that second Kaido.
Yeah.
Panda played a Kaido, James responded. For a while it looked like James had the advantage, but then Panda dropped that second Kaido, James couldn't respond. There's a couple of rushing queens, they did not do what you would do in a lot of other matchups. You didn't get the full value, just like the Kings didn't get the full value. But the fact of the matter is, Panda had a big attacker and a couple of little attackers on the board just for a couple of turns, and that was just enough to swing it over to Panda there.
Yeah, it was a really, really great way from Panda to close out the game ultimately as well. Like you say, having that second 10-drop Kaido really, really hurt James's ability to try and get himself back in the game, with him not being able to have a 10-drop Kaido to answer that one of his own. There was a lot of Kaido thrown around, there was a lot of board wipes happening, and James just didn't have the gas or have the consistency to be able to continue it along. And now we're up to game 2, or we will be up to game 2, and Panda could just be one game away from a top 8.
Yeah, and shout out to our lovely technical team backstage. Got a lovely little logo next to Panda's name there to show that they are one game up. Loving that. And yeah, I mean, the thing about a mirror match is we didn't really see many techs against the mirror here. In some matchups, you'll see particular cards played that are particularly good against the mirror, but we knew coming into this tournament, we knew Kaido was a legit deck. We knew Kaido was going to be in that second tier, but we knew it was going to be in that second tier. Nobody expected Kaido to be that amazing deck that was running away with the tournament. So when, you've only got 50 cards in your deck, so when people are making a decision of what to include, they're thinking, how do I beat red? How do I beat green? That was a big conversation coming into this weekend. And you're not expecting to be playing against Kaido mirrors that much. Although I spoke to my lovely friend Tim yesterday, who in their first 7 rounds played against 6 Kaido decks. Was playing green and apparently had a decent matchup. Tim had a good record at the time. I remember 6 of the first 8 games Tim played against Kaido. So there was plenty of Kaido around. But it wasn't necessarily at the top tables, it was at the middle tables. That's where a lot of the Kaido was yesterday. So without specific counters being played, you've just got to outplay your opponent in the mirror or outdraw them.
Yeah, and that's what we saw from Panda there, just being able to outdraw instead. Because, I mean, what do you try and tech in as a card to try and help you along the mirror? That Dragon Promo Kaido seems like one of the biggest options there, being able to help accelerate and recycle Don a little bit better, be able to use that 9-drop Kaido a little bit more consistently, the 10-drop even to just burn a couple of life away and get yourself the earning advantage. But when you're stuck into this one colour and this one purple matchup, what other options really are there? Because like you say, as soon as you get the 10-drop Kaido on board, the only real option and answer to it is a 10-drop Kaido in terms of cards that you can physically play, or like we saw from James, just swinging in with a 14,000 power Babanuki.
Yeah, that's basic. That's basic. I mean, that's Babanuki. It could be anyone, but you need to pile the Don on to do it is the problem. The card you referred to as a promo that just gets you an extra rested Don at the end of your turn. It's not seen a huge amount of play, but we did see it pop up in the deck yesterday. But I think that's it. You can't really counter the 10-drop Kaido. It's not really a counterable card like that, not with the card pool we've got available. It can only really be countered by the 10-drop Kaido. There's a million cards out there that return cards to the owner's hand or return to the bottom of the deck or get automatic KO, but they don't work on 10 cost or 12,000 power characters. So essentially this is what you're left with. So we do see a couple of Don, but no cards played. James has 3 Don. We're going to finally see someone playing a card. It is the Sasaki. It's not the Onigashima Island. And then we do see a tentative swing with a Kaido, which is going to go through. But it's our Thunder Bagua, which, like so many purple event cards, has a trigger that gets you an extra Don. Panda's kind of low. 5 Don on turn 2.
Yeah, and that's the second game consecutively that he's been able to take that top card off of his life, trigger that Thunder Bagua as well. It's such a fantastic card. One of the more popular purple event cards, and being able to accelerate that extra Don, you certainly don't mind giving up the event card, because remember, you don't have to activate the trigger if you do not want to, if you pull a card from your life with a trigger ability. But I think you'll certainly be happy to send that one to the trash pile, get the extra Don, and not worry about the extra counter power later down the game.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair point. We do see a Queen being played here. Now this is early, but now this is going to work. This is why you play the Rush Queen. This is a situation where you're going to be in a much better position. Now the minus 2,000 isn't going to KO the Sasaki, unfortunately, but it is going to bring it down to a 2,000 power.
Well, no, this is the different Queen. This is the starter deck Queen.
Oh, this is a starter deck Queen. I'm being silly.
This is the 2.
This is the blocker.
Yes, yeah, because there goes the attacker one there, the Rush one there, that into the discard pile off of the draw 2 discard 1 ability of Queen. So
I got distracted. There was so much Rush Queen at the end of last game.
there's just far too many muscles on the board, Ross. That's the problem. We see it on Onigashima Island as well there, being played by James a lot earlier, but he managed to get it out in game 1. This is going to help him out so much more considerably, be able to try and put a little bit of extra pressure on, threaten those 9 costs and 10 costs earlier, and a Don looking like it might be attached to a Sasaki there, being able to continue and help along with that. We saw that in game 1, being able to combine the attackers, the rashing effects and the Don acceleration effects of multiple different cards, and it opens up that window in the mid to late game.
Absolutely. Now, we did see the extra Don from Sasaki there. There seemed to be a little bit of a conversation. James was kind of pointing at something. Remember, Sasaki is only a 5,000 and Queen's a 6,000. So we now see, it looks like actually trying to take out the Queen with the leader, but we saw a counter coming out to stop it there, and that's really interesting. I think James was thinking he was going to get rid of the Queen there, but there wasn't enough Don on the Sasaki initially, and then the Kaido attack didn't go through because of the counter. And I think Panda's had a little bit of a break there. I don't know for a fact. We're not inside the players' heads here, Ben. You know, the players always have more information than us. But I think Panda's going into his turn a little bit lucky that Queen is still out there.
Yeah, possibly just a little bit of a miscalculation, or perhaps just like you got a little bit confused with the 2 Queens there earlier, thinking that was the Rasher Queen that was swinging in with an attack, being rested and was going to be able to get over it. We saw as well one of the cards used for the counter there, the Fukuro Kuji. Now that's not a card that we've seen quite a lot. Only 6 cost, 8,000 power vanilla, but being able to get that extra power on the board for relatively cheap, you could put it on all the way only as soon as turn 2 or 3, as long as you get the acceleration right. That's an interesting little tech that has been included into Panda's deck. I wonder if it might just be a 1 or 2 of, but might be a way to get over these Kaido decks, and in this Kaido mirror match, you only need to commit a few amount of Don than you would normally have to get over those big 12,000 power Kaidos that you know for a fact are going to be happily turning sideways turn after turn. So that's a really interesting, and there's another one.
So it's not a 1-off, Ben, it's definitely at least a 2-off. We see 1 in the trash, we see another one coming out, and I think you're right. One of the things that we need here is bigger characters to threaten those bigger characters. Here's the problem though, if you want to be playing this Fukuro-kuja, and you want to be doing that to try and counter the 10 cost Kaido, you kind of have to play it after the 10 cost Kaido. Because right now, if the Kaido comes out, you are going to be down. So we've got the Onigashima Island there, which is being used, grab an extra Don. James actually has nothing out on the field right now. He's got his leader and his stage, but there's no characters out there at all. We see a swing, but there's no boosting at all. This is very much kind of like what I like to call a cheeky tentative swing. One thing to bear in mind, if this game goes long and doesn't finish, Panda wins.
Yeah.
Because we haven't, Panda won game 1. We are running a bit out of time in game 2, so James not only needs game 2 to finish, he needs it to finish in his favour, but here we see the 9 cost Kaido. We wanted it last game, Ben, we get it this game.
Yeah, and this is a really good play here from James, being able to use that, like you say, that little tentative swing to be able to make sure that any counters get expended or event cards get expended early, and then the 9 cost being able to utilise that minus Don ability, managed to pop the Fukuro Kuji as well, so that worry for when the 10 drop Kaido does come is all safe and well, and with a rush coming in straight away, being able to take that extra life away, suddenly the game swings back into James's favour, and I think this is really the first time in this 3-game set that James has been a bit of a step ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. I think that's really good. I love the 9-drop Kaido, but it's really good pre-10-drop Kaido. When the 10-drop comes out and gets rid of everything, the 9-drop is just a weaker version of it. Here it can KO a 6 cost or less, so we got rid of that vanilla character on Panda's side of the board. Instead of 10,000 power card with Rush, and without a blocker on the board trying to counter a 10,000 power, it's too much to ask. You basically have to give up the life, and that means, at that point, that was a great time to play the 9-drop Kaido.
Yeah, and now with the turn being shifted back over to Panda, just playing, he's got 8 Don open, and he's going to try and go 9,000 into life, so not out of reach, not being able to attack that 9-drop Kaido. James just more than happy to take it. Here comes Onigashima Island now for Panda, and not really the turn that you'd have in mind, I think, in response to having a 9-drop. pushed against your face. I think that was a little bit of a difficult turn. I'm not quite sure what Panda has going on in his hand at the moment, but only being able to attach the 4-don onto the leader and just happily swing to try and get the game level back in life, still allowing that 10,000 power Kaido to run freely, and presumably it'll take a swing in this turn. It's a bit of an awkward situation for Panda to be in here.
Yeah, there's no, you've got the king in can, but we talked about the king last game. It doesn't do very much here. You've got some blast breath for countering, which is quite nice. That's going to come in handy. But the reality of the situation is very similar to the 10-drop 12,000 power Kaido, the 9-drop 10,000. It's a nuisance, and you need kind of some way to get rid of it. And I think your point about Panda's turn was really good there, Ben, because we've got the Kaido and the Onigashima Island. Well, so does James, but he's also got the 9-drop Kaido. Panda's board, there is nothing impressive on Panda's board right now that's posing a real threat. So sure, the life might be even, and the life obviously is even. We can see the life is even. But my point here is, it's not just about life. When we get very late in the game, it's about life. For a lot of the game, board state is far more important. You can take a couple of life in quick succession if you've got a good enough board state. But what we've got here is one player with a big threatening character and one player without.
Yeah, it looked like James just looked pre-prepped to turn that Kaido sideways. He's going to elect to actually put a Don underneath it here, 11,000 power. Wonder what he's trying to play around here, Ross.
Well, I'm thinking Blast Breath and a 2,000 power counter would go up to 11, so you can't be beaten by a Blast Breath and a 2,000. You need more to counter. That's what I'm thinking numbers-wise here.
Yeah, and you see that the 1 Don left open as well, so James recognising that Panda is showing Blast Breath in his hand by leaving that 1 Don open, and a load of Don being placed underneath the Kaido leader to take another swing in as well. And James now just really figuring out in his mind, right, now's the time that I need to press this advantage while I've got it. That 10-drop Kaido for any Kaido player is always right around the corner. When you've got cards like Onigashima Island, there is the Blast Breath. The
ulti, and see this is why he put the extra Don.
Yeah.
Because now he forced his opponent to use 2 counter cards and the Blast Breath. And we saw that from the Kaido, but it's a lot. You're basically forcing your opponent to put resource after resource after resource in. And he only blocked one of those 2 attacks, and that's what James is basically saying. I'm going to put so much Don on my field that sure, you might be able to counter one of these, but there's no way you have the resources to do both.
And I like from Panda him taking that first swing and taking that first life, being able to draw from his life. Well,
oh, it's here. This is how you do it. I love this. We see the cheeky attack with Kaido. It actually goes through, and then we see the 10-drop Kaido. And all it really does is take out the 9-drop Kaido. But now, a second ago, I was saying James has one big attacker and Panda has nothing. Well, now Panda's got one big attacker, and it's even bigger, and James has nothing.
How the tables have turned here in this second game of 3 in top 16 in the One Piece Treasure Cup live from Birmingham. So now James has to try and figure out a way to respond. And he's back in that situation that he was in game 1, where there's a big 12,000 power Kaido staring him, looking at his life like a very, very tasty snack, and thinking, well, how do I try and deal with this? A queen isn't a bad start. It's not a bad start getting to consolidate with a blocker, also use that Don -1 ability to draw some 2 cards and get rid of one. The Who's Who is going to be discarded here. Pretty easy to discard in this matchup, not really going to be usable with his ability. There's no real low cost cards to be able to get rid of, to speak of, but you can see in telegraphing with that queen play, he's trying to dig for the 10 cost of his own.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Purple doesn't have much plan. I was going to make the point, well, Panda might not have the 10 cost, and then Panda played the 10 cost, and I'm like, maybe don't say that, Ross. Maybe just leave that one in the bank. But whereas we see, these green and red decks with their really good searching and lots of draw power relative to the rest, not compared to other games, Purple really doesn't. Like, Queen is about the best draw power Purple's got. And we see, that last game went on for like half an hour. Both players had very large decks by the end of it. We see Kaido going in here, taking out a life. It is hard. It is hard to find that 10 drop if you don't have it. So, yeah, Panda was able to find it, but James having it to respond, maybe not.
Yeah, and what I'd really love to see here, I don't know if he's got it in hand, but this is where I'd really love to see the Rash Queen, being able to swing in with a Rash Queen,
I got
use
good news
that effect.
for you.
Well, it's certainly there. if he wants to use it. There's also the 9-drop Kaido, not enough Don to play it, however. So I think this is going to be, counting out the Don now, 3, 6, 7 available there. But being able to use that Rash Queen, try and bait out the Queen blocker, and then maybe just slide a cheeky Don underneath the leader Kaido, then swing in. Or alternatively, you could actually just try and burn the life with the leader skill, get rid of 7 Don, take that final life card, take a life card, then try and swing in with the rest. There's a couple of different options of play here. I'm not too sure what the right one is, and that's what Panda's got to try and figure out.
Yeah, he's eyeing up that Queen and he is playing it. I'm a big fan of burning a life, but there's 2 life remaining. I think it's a little bit too early for that. I think if Panda's going to win, Panda's going to win on the next turn.
And this is a huge play as well with the maths of this turn and this attack as well. Being able to minus 2,000 away from that blocker Queen means that it's not going to be able to block as easily or as flippantly as James would have liked to before that Queen was dropped down. That's now only down to 4,000 power. If it blocks, it dies.
And that is a huge deal. So we do see the Queen attacking here. Again, like you say, that Queen has had minus 4,000 from the Russia Queen's ability. We've got the Queen sorted out now. We know which one's which. And the question is, so what, was there a counter there?
Yeah, so the Higurashi countered off the Queen.
Yes, we can see it in the top right-hand corner there.
Yeah, I think it was a Babanuki that countered off the leader swing, and then the big 10 cost, you're just going to take that one, Ross.
Yeah,
there's not much you're doing with that.
But see, now I like Panda's next turn. Now I like using the leader ability and going, I've got 3 characters to swing with. One of them's going to hit.
Yeah.
So I like that very much indeed. James is doing a very low-key countering. We're not seeing it on the board. So when we're countering, look in the top right-hand corner, folks. You'll see it. You'll see them kind of, it's very, very muted, very, very quiet countering for James there. So James knows here, James is really on the back foot.
Yeah.
Like, no doubt about that. There is very little. I don't see a 10 cost in his hand. I don't see a 9 cost in his hand. I see a king, but we know that's not great in this matchup. And, you're facing down the 10 cost Kaido and the Russia Queen, who isn't great, but is a competent attacker. And if I'm Panda, I think at this stage we all kind of know Panda is probably just going to use a skill to burn a life and attack with 3 characters.
Yeah.
And one of those attacks is probably going to go through. So James is sitting here, and this is what's awkward when you're on the back foot like this, because James is thinking, right, well, I need to make sure that the attack doesn't go through next turn. So I need to prepare to stop all 3 of these attacks. One, I've got the Queen, that's easy. I need to stop the other 2. But then also, I can't just be stopping attacks. I need to make sure I'm putting on some offensive pressure myself, and I'm just not sure James has got the cards to do it.
Yeah, he's got a grip full of cards there in his hand, and you can see him fanning them out. I think I count 7 or 8 in hand. It's 8 cards in hand. So there's plenty of resources available for James to use immediately. But like you say, Ross, what resources does he have in there? How is he going to be able to try and put these together to be able to survive this next turn? It doesn't look like that he's got tons of counter in his hand, and looking like he wanted to put pretty much everything underneath the leader Kaido there. Even just being able to tentatively do that just sort of signals to your opponent, I'm in a really, really difficult situation here. I don't really have much. And it's weird, right? Because there's not a lot of counter power on the top end of this deck, because you need those high-end offensive characters like the 10 cost Kaido, like the 9 cost Kaido. They don't have counter. So already that's presumably 7 or 8 cards in your deck that have no counter. And if you find a lot of those and you're in the situation like this where it's like, well, I'd love to be able to play them for their offensive capabilities, for their skills and for their effects, but I also need to be aware of the fact that I have guaranteed at least 3 attacks coming my way, maybe even a 4th if a second Rash Queen or a Rash Kaido gets dropped next turn. It's a real rock and a hard place situation for James as he swings in.
He's swinging in big with his leader Kaido here. He's got 9,000 power. And actually what you were just saying there, went back to what you were talking about a while ago with, do you play 3 or 4 of the 10 cost, bearing in mind you've got that clogging up. Because you don't got counter, and that's a bad thing. So we do see a swing here from James trying to get that offensive capability going. I mean, if you're James, would there have been a route of play where you just kind of use your skill to get rid of your opponent's last life? pile all your Don on your leader or queen and cross your finger your opponent can't counter. I'm not saying that's a good play, let's be perfectly clear. I'm saying I think Panda's going to win next turn. So if I'm James, you know, as a desperation play, do you maybe just activate your skill, get rid of the last life, try one big swing and cross your fingers and it goes through? Because we see the who's who coming down here. That's 3 Don being used on that. And you said yourself, in this matchup, you know, Don -1, KO a free cost or less. There isn't a free cost or less.
No.
So it's a vanilla free cost 3,000 power. That's not good at this stage of the game.
I certainly, I think that it's not, there's no right or wrong answer here, I don't think, Ross, because I think I like the idea of being able to attack into the queen, just get rid of it. That's one less card and you are banking on your opponent having something with rush to be able to force through the final closing moments of this game. You can see there's 3 Don up, so you'd imagine that there is some kind of event in James's hand ready, but as Panda is about ready to mull over and drop this big Russia Kaido, get rid of that blocker as well. This is spelling out the beginning of the end. You'd have to think now for James, there's no way you're going to be able to stop 10,000 and 12,000 power from hand.
And this is why you don't use the skill to get rid of the life. You don't need to use the skill to get rid of the life, because this 9 cost Kaido is going to take a life, you know. 10,000 power, super hard to counter it. There's no blocker on board. You took out the blocker at the same time. It goes back to what I've said many times. The players have access to a lot more information than we do. If I knew Panda had that 9 cost Kaido, that I would have known that was a better option than using your skill. But this is while we see the Blast Breath coming out here as a little bit of a counter,
and
with an X-Drake as well. And then we see an attack with Kaido. James might be able to hang on for a turn here.
Ooh, he has.
He's managed to hold on for a turn. I kind of like this. And the problem is, if I'm James, I know I'm not surviving another turn.
No, this is where you need 10 cost Kaido. You need 10 cost Kaido yesterday, let's be perfectly frank, but this is absolute Route 1 stations. 10 drop Kaido needs to hit the board realistically here if you are going to survive and try and put a little bit more leeway back into trying to get back into this game.
And I think James just asked how many cards are in Panda's hand. I think we just saw that interaction.
Yeah.
Because if I'm James, I'm thinking desperation play here. Get rid of the last life, do one big swing, see if it goes through. But we know Panda's got a lot of cards in hand. The chances, and there's the chances are very high that there is going to be a counter here. But if I'm James, I'm in desperation mode right now. Panda is probably going to win this game, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So if I'm James, I'm thinking, what can I do? 10 drop Kaido would be amazing, but that's probably not an option. So we do see a big swing. We're not seeing the skill. We do see the attack go through. We see all of the Don going on to who's who. One big swing. Does Panda have? Did that go through? Did that win?
I think certainly looked like it with the body language.
It looks a lot like James just did a last desperation swing with that who's who, and I poo-pooed the who last turn, and I think that actually just worked. Looks like they are shuffling up for a third game. Yes, there's confirmation.
Wow.
James did win that. Now that's not the desperation play I was thinking.
No.
And like we say, we saw James basically saying how many cards are left in your hand, trying to figure out the counter and just going, I'm going for 2 big swings and I'm hoping you can't counter. I don't think Panda had any Dawn available, so we knew Blast Breath was off the field. And I want it on the record, I think my plan of getting rid of the last life and doing a big swing with a leader would also have worked. But let's be clear here, right? That wasn't one of those situations where James goes, yes, I've got this game, and triumphantly does it.
Yeah.
That is a situation where James, and we saw the thinking, we saw how tentatively the Don got attached. We saw the kind of, you could feel the tension as the attack went through, where James did not know if those attacks were going through. We were kind of a little bit stunned, and we were like, well, let's just confirm that actually happened like it did. Because the problem is, in a situation like that, I've seen many games on stream where James's attack fails and then he immediately concedes because he knows he's lost.
Yeah.
Which is why we need that confirmation, because it could have been the attack went through, or it could have been the attack failed and James immediately conceded because he knew he had no answer. That was a very weird tense end to the game. But now we've got 5 minutes left and we're on even footing.
Yeah, this is going to be... We know these Kaido matches are typically very, very long and grindy and very, very difficult to try and get through. But it goes back as well to a point that I made earlier in that second game. is the lack of counter power in these purple decks, and we saw it right there with Panda, not being able to have that counter in hand because you have these big offensive bodies. They don't have the counter on them on their sides of their cards. You're not going to be able to drop them down and be able to save yourself from those attacks there that were very, very sneaky in the end. I'll have to point out that was a very, very well hidden and telegraphed move there to be able to swing in with the who's who.
No one expected it, frankly.
No.
James did. I'm sorry, I refuse to believe James expected that was going to work. We didn't think it was going to work. James didn't think it was going to work. The only person who knew it was going to work was Panda, because he knew up, and he had a lot of cards in hand. Yeah. That's the thing. He had plenty of cards, and just a little bit of a cheeky secret here. Panda started the game with 3 Onigashima Island in hand.
Wow.
So on the one hand, yes, you got access to it early. There's no counter. You can't play another one. They're dead cards in hand. And I'm wondering if that's going to be an issue kind of moving forward for the next couple of turns. James has the blocker queen out, and it is a blocker queen. I checked this time. We've got the 2-cost blocker in as well. James is setting up. And remember, the first tiebreaker is remaining life. Panda took a life super early in this game. You've got to be ahead on life. And I'm sorry, but these players had better have checked the tiebreakers, because we saw a game yesterday that was lost on a tiebreaker that did not need to be lost. We can't have that again. Second tiebreaker is cards remaining in deck, but the first tiebreaker is life. Don't leave it to chance. You don't start counting cards in deck. Be ahead on life when time gets called. Yeah,
and you can see the time counting down on the top of your screen there, just 3 minutes and 40 seconds and counting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there is still the 5 minutes overtime rule
absolutely.
In top 16.
So or 3 minutes, whichever is shorter.
Or 3 extra turns, whichever ends first. And that's kind of what both of these players are playing for here. You can see setting up their respective bottom. It's a 10-minute overtime instead.
Top, it is. We've been corrected. Cheers to Carl there.
Yes, big thank you to Carl, and big thank you to Carl in general this weekend for putting on this stream. It's been absolutely fantastic, the camera work and the quality that we've been able to put on for everybody tuning in at home. It's been a tremendous effort, so good on you, Carl. You're an absolute star. So the Queen there going down to a Brachio Bomber. Big swing there.
We've not seen many event cards played, not as counters in this matchup, but we saw it there. We see a swing from James. It does get countered by Panda. Another swing from James, and it gets countered by Panda. Stop me if you've heard that before. And like I keep saying, we're not going to see an end to this game. Even with the 10 minutes overtime, this game ain't finishing.
No.
Not unless one player gets absolutely steamrolled, and that is not likely in this matchup. This is a matchup where you build up over time. We've seen that twice in a row. All the players are playing for here is the life lead. That is what's important. If you can get the life lead while drawing fewer cards, that would be huge. Having more cards in your deck at the end of the game is a second tiebreaker. But it's so hard to play for that second tiebreaker. Play for the first one, be ahead on life. And right now, Panda's ahead on life.
Yeah, there's far too much randomisation and things like that to take into consideration to try and rely on that as your second tiebreaker. Here comes the 6-cost Russia Queen. We are going to see the Don Minus effect as well there to put that blocker queen down to 4,000 power. I like that method of play. Once again, you've got a couple of Don open. If you want to put it underneath one of the characters, either the Queen or the leader Kaido, swing into it, get rid of the blocker first and foremost, and then try and take a life, extend that lead. You're going to see 5,000 go into the now 4,000 Queen after the Queen effect, the leader Queen that is. There's far too many Queens on the board right now, Ross. I'm getting confused.
We do see the double counter there, so that does get stopped. Running out of resources, we now see a big attack with the Russia Queen is now 8,000 into a 4,000. And your 5,000 counter is too much. So now the blocker's gone down. Panda's got a slightly better board state and is ahead on life. So this is going to be interesting. Now 10 minutes overtime is quite a bit. We've got time remaining.
Oh, big 9-cost Kaido being dropped there as well.
I like this.
That is a massive play there from James. Gets rid of that 6-cost Queen, so that means that there's not going to be as much offensive pressure coming on the pushback next turn. And then the Russia Kaido being able to draw the game level on life. And now, as things stand, if we go to tiebreakers, it will be about getting your abacuses out, ladies and gentlemen, because the cards in deck will matter.
Yeah, it absolutely is going to be very important as we go through this game. We do see Kaido attacking into the Kaido, and we see the 10-drop Kaido. What is the best answer to a 9-drop Kaido? It's a 10-drop Kaido.
That is such a huge answer there from Panda, just when it looks like he's going to be able to be put under the cosh as we come into this 10 minutes of overtime, or 3 turns, whichever ends first. That is a massive, massive answer, and now there's not going to be as much offensive pressure. There's not 10 Don available either to be able to respond to that straight away with a 10 cost of your own, because James used that Don minus ability of the 9 cost to get rid of the 6 cost Queen, be able to swing in with Rush as well, and all James can do now, set up a blocker, try and consolidate for next turn. Time is called. We are on turn 0 in top 16, Ross.
Well, I think we might need confirmation as to whether it is 3 turns. If we've gone up for 10 minutes, I'd like to see some confirmation for Top Cup that it is 3 turns. Bearing in mind, of course, this is still the first big tournament we've had here in the UK. You know, we're all kind of new to this. It's 10 minutes. We'll get confirmation as to whether it's 3 turns, hopefully, or not. But regardless, there is no clear winner. We're not done here. We are carrying on the game. The first tie-break is remaining life, and that is very important. Right now, Panda's got more remaining life. James does have that Queen blocker, which is kind of a big deal. But as it stands at the moment, Panda is on the front foot. But like one might expect from a mirror match, I don't think we're going to be in a situation here where one player, you know, runs away. We said we got 1-1 at the moment, and this third game at the moment, Ben, is very tight.
It is very, very tight. At the moment, Panda does have the slight advantage with James down to 3 life. Panda is on 4. We see the attack there just being easily counted away after a 6,000 swing in from the leader, Kaido. But now you've got a 12,000 power Kaido being held back home. This is where you'd like to see another one of those 6 cost queens be able to just put that blocker queen down to 4,000 power, force James into an uncomfortable position. Do I take the life away, or do I risk myself and losing the blocker, losing the one little bit of board position that I've got currently? It's a real difficult situation that these two players are going to have to try and navigate. It's going to be just a swing in with the 12,000, happy to let the 6K go, and he's going to respond with a 6,000 power of his own. Will elect to use the draw ability. Yes, he will. So we'll see what Panda can try and get himself in. Perhaps just trying to dig as well for some more counters, perhaps for a next turn if there is a Rush Kaido of James's own coming on. We see Onigashima Island pitched away as well there, easy enough to get rid of. And now the big 7K swing demands 3,000 counter at least, and James doesn't have it.
No, so we do see the life being taken there. And Jay, you know, Panda's going up by 2 life here. This is a very, very big deal. Kaido's coming in, gets a bit of a big swing, and Panda here is doing exactly what he's supposed to do. We're in overtime. We're, you know, maybe the game finishes, maybe the game doesn't, but this is a time where you're not really playing to win the game. Playing to win the game isn't a huge deal. It's trying to be ahead on life. One thing which is really bearing in mind, we need to remember, both these players have a leader which has a skill that can take a life at the last second. So if we are right with overtime about to be called, the active player can activate that skill and take a life, which could decide this match.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point there, Ross. But first and foremost, James needs to get an attack to go through to be able to put himself back on an even keel with Panda. It's 4-2 in the moment in favour of Panda. You can see James there just making a little bit of calculation, doing a few sums in his head. He still has the ability to attack in with his leader, but with that 6,000 power blocker still being held back from Panda, it would need at least 2 Don attachment underneath it to be able to force that Panda to get rid of that queen for it to die.
Yeah, it's an awkward situation all around him. We can see we're late on time. Both the players are thinking very hard here. It's hard to decide, you know, what exactly is the best way to go here. Getting some blockers out, and we know that both players are playing quite, you know, low-cost purple blockers. That is going to be big to try and stop some attacks. At this stage, it's really important to remember it's not about winning, it's about having the life lead. I've said that several times, and I think that needs to be stressed. There is a Black Maria, there is a low-cost blocker, like I said. That can just stop an attack. But James, he needs to take some life. He does swing with a leader. Is this going to go through? Panda doesn't have any Don to blast breath. Does he have the counter?
And it is with that 7,000 as well that I alluded to earlier. So it is going to force the queen to go away. That's a little win there, I think, if I'm James, to try and set himself up for next turn. You've got the Black Maria there ready to hang back away from the block off of the big 12,000 power Kaido. It depends on how many Don that Panda is willing to commit onto his leader now to try and continue on the pushback. Or is there going to be a big 9-drop rusher coming to really try and put this game to bed?
I mean, that would be awesome, having that 9 drop. It does not look like he's got it. The hand is not looking amazing. We do see a handshake there. So I believe that means that Panda has won. Panda is ahead by 2 life. We're just waiting for the official confirmation. But we've seen a handshake. There we go. Panda does win your first top 16 game. And that's what we see. In overtime, the turns run out. And Panda is ahead by 2 life. And that's all it takes. And I love how Panda played that overtime. It seemed like Panda was really conscious of the fact, I need to take more life. I am going to be the life leader. And unfortunately, James, it wasn't badly played by any stretch of the imagination. James just ran out of time. I'd love to have seen a full game 3. Never going to happen, Ben. That's how we finish.
And one of the biggest misses there for James throughout that game 3, no Onigashima Island. You can see it right there on the board. James hasn't altered his board state in any way. No Onigashima Island in turn 3 in game 3 whatsoever for James. And it is such a big killer for these Kaido decks. It relies on the Onigashima Island very, very early because of how much high end that you are playing.
Yeah, it's such an advantage getting extra Dawn and, you know, firstly building up to get those 9 and 10 drop Kaido so quickly, also making sure that we've got the Dawn being minused and having everything that we can to, you know, to rearrange that. But I do believe we are actually going to be bringing in our winning player here. I think we're going to have a chat with Panda. So we're just going to bring him in just a moment and we can kind of hear about why Kaido is good and, you know, basically all of these fun little questions we've got, because I'll be honest with you, like I've said, I like Kaido. Kaido's a good deck. I would not feel confident bringing it to a 500-person tournament. I think it's very resource intensive, it's very slow in the early game, and there's some really big decisions that can swing the entire game.
Yeah, well, it's just like we've seen there with James. I mean, that was a best of 3 there. We saw in a best of 1 scenario, if you don't get that Onigashima Island, it's really, really hard to try and come back from that. But in the best of 3, if you've got it, you've got it. If you don't, you don't. And Panda had it.
Absolutely. So we're going to say goodbye to Ben for a minute. We're going to welcome in Panda. You've just booked your space in the top 8 of the Treasure Cup.
That feels good.
Feels good, right?
Yeah, it feels good.
So why Kaido? Why did you pick Kaido? Because it wasn't a top choice coming into this event for most people.
Yes, I saw this. I predicted this. When I was testing with my friends, I said, I think we will find the most played deck is Kaido. When we played local, we played a lot. We played 2-3 tournament a week. We played a real lot. And my friend was a good green player, a good kid player.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, what can I do to clear the board? I had to play Kaido.
Kaido is good.
That's fine.
It clears the board nicely. Okay, so you think Kaido's going to be the most played deck?
I think Kaido could be one of the most, or maybe the most.
Because I that wasn't what I was hearing coming into the event. So here's my question. How do you prepare? Because you just played a mirror match in top 16.
Yeah.
You were expecting a lot of Kaido.
Yeah.
So what do you do personally? How do you prepare for the mirror?
I played a lot of mirrors, and then I tried to set up a best game without Onigashima. So I played a lot of cards that is not a dead card in your hand. So I play really few blockers. I play the Rush Queen.
Yeah.
I play 4 Kaido at 10. So I know a lot of people play 2 or 3. So I say if I had to play a mirror, it is like who play 2 Kaidos at 10, maybe can win.
Yeah, and we saw that in game 1. You played the first Kaido, it got responded, but then when you played the second Kaido, your opponent didn't really have an answer, and that was a swing. That was what won you game 1, getting that second Kaido down so quickly. Okay, so you're in top 8, you're feeling really good. What are you scared of? What decks don't you want to play?
I'm scared about myself. really, because I'm scared about no Onigashima. But if I got my tools, I'm not frightened of nothing.
I mean, that is a great attitude to go into a tournament with, going, look, I'm a good player, I've got a good deck, if my deck runs, I'm going to win. Well, congratulations, booking your space in top 8, that is fantastic. And don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have a quick break, but we don't have to wait for any other games to finish, so we're going to be back with top 8 very quickly indeed. Congratulations, man, that was awesome.